Hello, my name is Michael Dooley, and I run North America for Data Scout, a cloud-based master data management tool built specifically for Salesforce.com. Today, we're going to give a quick overview of Data Scout and how it works with the surrounding systems. Before I go into that, I thought I'd at least give you a little bit of a look at our heritage. Data Scout is a 100% cloud vendor, which is based on Force.com, so we're 100% on the Salesforce platform. We invented the space of cloud master data management, so we're the first and only cloud-based master data management. There's a couple others entering the space, but we'll address that later on. In terms of some external validation, we recently were awarded a number of different accolades from both Gartner and Salesforce. Gartner gave us the Cool Vendor of 2012 in master data management and data governance. Salesforce has awarded us a couple different certifications and awards, both the Aloha app certification, which prevents us from adversely impacting your Salesforce implementation, as well as the customizations, and then the Innovation Award. So we've done some very creative things within the Salesforce environment. But technology is just one part of the picture. We also have a best practices document, so a methodology for implementing this and making sure you're successful. So regardless of your size, the vertical, your specialty within Salesforce, we essentially have a template to help you expedite the implementation, increase the adoption, and ultimately be more successful with Data Scout. So that's kind of who we are. In terms of what we look at or what we see when we engage with customers, we typically see data coming in four different forms. First and foremost is Salesforce. That's the one in the middle. So we're built on Force.com. We have a natural alliance and really good support from the Salesforce product management, marketing, field operations. Also, we see data coming from on-premise systems. So easy examples would be Oracle, SAP. We also see from any application within your data center. So Microsoft, BMC, Remedy, essentially custom databases would be a great example as well. Moving over to the left-hand side, we see data coming in from a number of different cloud systems. So as people move more and more applications into the cloud, that becomes an opportunity to isolate customer data. What we want to do is bridge those islands of customer data into your Salesforce. So Eloquent Marketo for the marketing group, Workday, Good Data, NetSuite are all examples of cloud data systems that we've worked with in the past. The final example is one that we've seen quite a bit of growth, and it's the data providers. So this could be a Salesforce-centric implementation like data.com. Very often we engage with customers and they have prearranged data relationships with people like Dun & Bradstreet, Hoover's. There's a lot of vertical list providers which we'll address. So each one of these systems is a great opportunity to bring or enrich data into Salesforce and make it more useful. So that's kind of what we see when we engage with customers. In terms of what we're able to do, we typically bucket them in four different categories. Data cleansing, which is your blocking and tackling, how to clean up data so it's in a workable condition. Integration, how do we transport data from either those cloud systems, data providers, or on-premise systems into Salesforce and do more creative things with it. Consolidation is the idea of bringing two or more data sources together, meshing them via business rules, and creating that 360-degree view of a customer. And then finally, relationships. So how do we use all that data from all the different backends, create relationships, understand how we segment down customers so we can better sell, market, and service them. So the upsell, cross-sell opportunity is large in this area. Breaking them down into their constituent pieces, let's first cover off on data cleansing. And so if you've ever seen a Salesforce implementation, you've probably seen a bit on dirty data. At its core, Data Scout has built into it a fuzzy matching engine. And what that means is that Data Scout's able to see similarities in records where Salesforce typically wouldn't. So that takes a lot of different forms, it has a lot of different utility within Salesforce. Probably the easiest way to think about that is removing and preventing duplicates. So Data Scout has its fuzzy matching. It goes and analyzes all your database, figures out where their potential duplicates are in place, and takes action on them. So it can either raise it to a human being to merge those potentially, take an automatic execution task around it, and we'll talk about all the different ways we can address that. Once we've cleaned up that database, we also have a user interface hook into preventing it. So whether it's creating new accounts, new leads, new contacts, converting leads into contacts, all the different tasks of people creating data within Salesforce, exists an opportunity for duplicates to be introduced. So Data Scout's not only going to clean this database on an ongoing basis, but also have hooks to maintain the cleanliness. So data quality is not a part-time task. It's automatically checked every time data is introduced into the system. We often see inconsistent data causing challenges, and it usually manifests itself in inaccurate reporting, poor campaign segmentation, and many other areas of Salesforce. An easy one to put our arms around is the country field. In Salesforce, this is a free text field. So on the left-hand side of that arrow, you see USA represented a couple different ways, US being one of those permutations. But in reality, it's all the same country. So wouldn't it be great if we could normalize or standardize that data to United States or whatever we want it to look like? So Data Scout has the capability of not only taking data that's user supplied, but also integrated data and making that one consistent data element. So you don't have to worry about generating a report with all the different permutations of USA. Data Scout takes care of that for you. Along those same lines, because Data Scout knows what are valid values, it also knows what's invalid values or kind of fuzzy matches of that. So if I'm a salesperson and I enter in a nowhere value into the country field, we know that's not valid, and we can actually block that from being presented to the user, entered into the system. Ultimately, when we come out of this data cleansing environment or stage, we want it to be complete, consistent, and duplicate free. And I always think about this as kind of the basic blocking and tackling towards data excellence, is that we need to do this. It's not the most glamorous bit, and it's probably not the highest value for our business users, but it gets our data in order and shape for us to move forward. The next piece is integration, and there's a lot of different vendors that do integration. What Data Scout does or enhances that to those vendors is bring data quality to integration. So if you have a number of different systems within your four walls, those would be represented on the left, as well as the cloud systems on the top right, Data Scout can not only hook into those and transport that data, but it also has the mechanism to clean that data as it comes in. So if you have 15 versions of your customer data in SAP or Oracle, and you're trying to bring that into Salesforce, Data Scout can take those 15 and organize them into the singular entity that is your customer. So really valuable in terms of getting Salesforce more usable, getting salespeople more quickly to attach opportunities, leads to their different customers. So it really simplifies the process of data management within Salesforce. So the idea here would be we connect all the systems into Salesforce, and then we transport the useful data so that Data Scout can do some of its creative things with that data. One of the bits of creativity that people derive quite a bit of value from is consolidation. And you can think of consolidation as bringing together two or more different data sources and meshing them within Salesforce. So we've got three different use cases that we work with customers on. There's many more, but these kind of are representational of what we've seen. The first is around consolidating Salesforce orgs. So we've run into a number of different customers. They've had Salesforce grow up in different geographies, different divisions. Maybe they bought some people and they had Salesforce in there. And what they want to do is rationalize the data across them. So in this particular example, Salesforce, there's three different Salesforce orgs. I want to get a global forecast across each one of them because Data Scout's built on Force.com, understand data management. This is something that we can do out of the box. So Data Scout not only coalesces that data into a single report or instance of Salesforce, but it also executes the business rules on how to take care of conflicts. So there's a couple interesting pieces in there. One is I'm going to bring data together and take the unique values into a customer master view. And then where there's conflicts, I essentially have predefined business rules that Data Scout follows to remediate any of those conflicts. So when people talk about customer-centric view or doing a global account collaboration, how do I do that against segmented Salesforce organizations? Data Scout's the answer. The next version of consolidation is more of a traditional MDM, which is connecting front office and back office business processes and systems. So this is kind of a representational view of front office systems, which are Salesforce, back office systems running ERP or financial information like SAP, and we've got some service management data within BMC. So ultimately, we're going to focus in on the constituency of sales and marketing. And wouldn't it be great if we could empower our sales force, our marketing team with all the data across all these systems, but give it into one consolidated view? So what I want to do is bring forward some of that back office data into Salesforce and aggregate it all into one spot. So we'll take a look at a demonstration of doing just this. But again, the idea is, how do I get a more holistic view of my customer interactions? How do I let my salespeople see the open red tickets that may be existing in BMC Remedy? Or how can I see the global relationship or invoicing within SAP? So 360-degree view of a customer is really important here. The final piece is around third-party data enrichment. So again, we talked a little bit before around Salesforce and data.com. We've run into that quite a bit in the Salesforce ecosphere. But on the right-hand side, we also have these vertical list providers. And you can think of these as kind of the industry-specific versions of that data. So Bloomberg's, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, Thomson Reuters, they all have some financial specific information. Then in the pharma space or healthcare space, there's IMS Health and some others. The retail organizations often leverage something like Planet Retail. Each one of these vertical list providers is a great wealth of information, but there's very large challenges in bringing that into Salesforce. So what Data Scout provides is an open, flexible way to digest all these third-party data sources. And when you think about Data Scout, just think of data that exists anywhere. There's data sources on the back end that could be fed into Salesforce. So in this particular example, we want to bring in all information from all these back-end systems and start to build more interesting relationships, which is going to take us into our next topic. The next piece is around relationships, and this is about finding the white space within customers. So for a sales organization, we want to find opportunities of cross-sell and upsell. For marketing, we want to find more creative ways to enhance those campaigns so they're more bearing better fruit. So for companies, a typical landscape would have many different ERPs, custom databases, some different CRM systems. What we want to do is reorient that data so it's more customer focused. It's not so dependent on where it's stored. It's about how we view our customers. So Data Scout has a unique ability to both digest the Salesforce and backend information, reorient that data so it's more customer centric, and ultimately have a single view of that global relationship. This particular example, we've got data stored in a couple of different CRM systems, Salesforce and Oracle, as well as some ERPs and SAP. And what we want to do is understand our global relationship with McDonald's. Well, that has different geographic use cases, different brands, different locations. And so we have this relationship or account hierarchy expanded out on the kind of the traditional Salesforce version of that, which is great. It gives us a nice visualization of how that data exists within our enterprise. But what we want to do is make that actionable. We want to get to that cross-sell, that upsell, that better campaign. So what that data can be leveraged then is across dashboards, reporting, campaigns. And we'll take a look in the demonstration about how we can actually take a global forecast based on data across different CRM systems, different back-end systems, and drill into that at a very finite level. So what we want to do, because Data Scout has been able to aggregate all this data together, is engage that dashboard at any level. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about the global ultimate, any subsidiary, or anywhere in between, we can essentially have reporting very discrete across each one of those. So obviously for global accounts, we'd have improved collaboration and coordination. We'd be able to start to do vertical segmentation, get a better idea across different customers and different verticals, what plays are working best. So we spoke a little bit about what the capabilities of Data Scout are. Now let's see them within Salesforce. So what I've navigated over to is a Salesforce instance which has poor quality data. So the use case here, we've dumped a bunch of data in, installed Data Scout, but haven't run anything yet. So what we want to show you is a bit of before and after. So in a typical situation, Data Scout would be operating all the time behind the scenes, keeping data coming in from users, data coming in from lists being uploaded, data coming in from integrations. All that would be cleansed on an ongoing basis. But to show you a little bit about how Data Scout works, let's go and take a look at this Salesforce account. So as you can see, we go and just look at a quick bird's eye view that there's multiple accounts with similar variations of the same name. So for this particular instance, I am a styrofoam cup provider. My customers are the fast food restaurants. So my first one we'll look at is Carl's Jr. I can see here that there's 3 different iterations of the same account. So I click in, and what Data Scout has done behind the scenes is use its fuzzy matching to actually find all the different accounts within Salesforce that match up to this. So if I scroll down, I'll see this section called duplicate accounts, which is actually a pre-built integration of Data Scout into Salesforce. And so when I click, I can actually take action on these. For the first example, we're going to do a simple merge or a dedupe. And if you've used Salesforce before, this merge screen probably looks pretty familiar. It's native Salesforce capability, save a couple different shortcomings. So if I look at this, I can see there's 3 different accounts in this view. I can selectively choose fields from each one of them to end up in the master. And what Data Scout provides the capability is expanding on native Salesforce behavior. So in native Salesforce, I could typically only merge up to 3 different records. Data Scout expands on that and allows me to merge many different records in the same operation. The next piece where Data Scout expands on Salesforce is the lineage of the data. So in a typical Salesforce, I merge, or I have my system admin merge these, and all the previous data essentially vaporizes. So if I go into Data Scout, I can actually go back to this Carl's Jr. record and do a bit of synopsis on, is the duplicate accounts fixed? It says yes, no duplicates found. But then the interesting bit becomes available. So because of my rights or privileges in my role, I get this consolidated view button. I click on consolidated view and I can see where all this information came from. So essentially, in this particular example, we merged 3 different accounts, which is Salesforce accounts. So I get each one of those data elements behind the scenes, so I can see what it looked like even pre-merge. So for compliance, audit capabilities, lineage of where that information came from, Data Scout essentially stores all that for you. And we'll talk a little bit about where that's valuable as we start integrating systems. So one of the interesting pieces where Data Scout extends beyond Salesforce is managing merges. So in typical Salesforce world, I merge 2 records. The data that existed before that merge essentially vaporizes. So I have no lineage, no way to roll that back, no understanding of what that data looked like beforehand. But Data Scout enables this consolidated view button. And what that is based on my role, I may get access to see behind the scenes where this information is coming from. So this consolidated view gives me essentially all the data that I had before the merge and after the merge. So really important when we talk about audit, compliance. So if I go back down to the data sources, you'll remember that I had 3 different accounts that emerged together. So here's the first one, second one, and third one. What Data Scout is managing all the data, both pre-merge and post-merge. So really helpful for audit and compliance capabilities. So that's kind of what a very simplistic merge looks like. As we go through this demonstration, we're going to start building up in kind of the level of sophistication of what you can do. In order to kind of find potential merges, we use fuzzy logic. And so what we've exposed through Salesforce is this fuzzy matching screen. And this just gives you a little bit of insight into how Data Scout works behind the scenes. So I'm going to compare a couple different objects in this particular example to accounts. I could very easily compare non or dissimilar objects as well. So a very common example we see is people want to compare the existing leads versus existing accounts or the existing contacts. And so you can do that cross-object comparison to really understand kind of all the data elements within your Salesforce. But for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to look at 2 records I know that are in there. El Pollo Loco, and El Pollo Loco. So in this particular example, we've got two different records with slightly different spellings, but a lot of similar data. And so if I scroll down, here's the results of that comparison that Data Scout makes. So each one of these columns represents a record. So record A is El Pollo Loco. If you look closely, that has two C's. And record B, El Pollo Loco, this is with one C. So the way the fuzzy matching works is Data Scout takes those two records, breaks them down into their constituent fields, and then on a field by field basis attaches a score to it. So in this particular example, this one's 92%. And what it's done is compared this field against this field, and the similarity value is 92%, so quite similar, just that one C is the differentiating factor. Then it goes through and does that for each one of these fields. So you can scroll through and see for yourselves. There's some that are identical, some that are slightly different, and that's the raw score. So that's Data Scout kind of analyzing your data. What's really powerful is being able to customize Data Scout to understand or adapt to your specific use cases for data. That's what we use this weighting for. So the weighting gives a prioritization to the data. So in this particular example, the 200 represents an exact match need. So they have to be in the same country, in this example, US, in order for us to even evaluate them. If I start going into kind of these lesser weightings, this has a 75 weighting to it. So it's very high priority, it's not mandatory. And the way this works is the score is multiplied by the weighting, gets the weighted score, add all that up, and we compare it against a relative threshold, which again are configurable. So I can compare it against a matching threshold, which is what's considered a match, and I'll compare it against a duplicate threshold, which what's a duplicate within the system. So again, all this is completely configurable. Data Scout ships with best practice settings out of the box. So based on all of our customer use cases, different verticals, we've got a lot of understanding on how customer data exists, person accounts, contacts accounts, leads. All that data is kind of represented differently in Salesforce, and so we give you some best practices out of the box. So we've looked at kind of a singular account merge and how the fuzzy matching works. When we start using this in larger scale environments, people want to get higher levels of automation. So we built in different data steward screens so people can have a roll-up view of different data elements. So I'm going to go into duplicate accounts, and I can now look at all the duplicates that Data Scout has found across the Salesforce database. So here's column 1, which is our company name master. Here's column 2, and then there's our similarity score. And I've got a checkbox where I can take action on a collective group of different records. So the ultimate goal is we start to configure Data Scout so we get to that high level of automation until the point where it's completely automated. So the goal here in this duplicate accounts is to kind of provide insight into what we call the gray area. So when Data Scout goes and analyzes the database, it puts it into 3 buckets. A very high confidence match, which means they're duplicates almost certainly, and we can automatically merge those. A very low confidence match, which means that score is very low and they're not related. And then there's that in-between or gray area where we maybe want to elevate that to a human so they can take a look at it. And these data steward screens are a way to look at that gray area. So I'm going to go back to this accounts and we'll take a look at kind of all the bad data that we looked at in the first screen. And what I've done is set up some business rules to tell Data Scout how to behave on a mass merge execution. So I'm just going to go ahead and click into the demo, launch this mass merge job, and then quickly go back to my account screen so I can see Data Scout in action. So again, here is kind of all the data with the different variations of those similar accounts. And behind the scenes, Data Scout's launched its mass merge job and is firing off business rules on how to aggregate or merge or consolidate that information. So if I update this, I should see some progress in terms of the number of records overall. I've now got down from 22 records down to 10. Bear in mind, all those merge and all the data quality that's going on behind the scenes is completely audited, is logged. You can go back to it, you can make changes to it. So it's kind of protecting yourself against some of those changes should you need that. So we've gone through and kind of merged and deduplicated the existing database. We also want to make sure we protect that on an ongoing basis. So if there's integrations or marketing lists being imported, Data Scout's always going to execute the jobs that we've seen before. But what about people entering data through the user interface? Data Scout's actually got its fuzzy logic protecting or insulating Salesforce as a whole. So if I were to go back through, and Carl's Jr. was one of those that we took a look at that we cleaned, what if I try as a salesperson to create that new account? What happens behind the scenes is Data Scout's going to go back, take all this information that the user inputted in, and do a fuzzy search against the existing database. So it's in real time checking all that data in the different accounts. So we can see here, this Carl's Jr. instance is the one we've already cleaned up, which is very powerful in and of itself. What's equally or more powerful is I can now go look at integrated systems as well. So if I have Remedy integrated in this particular example, or SAP, I can now see a purview across all the different systems connected within Salesforce. And let's say, for instance, I wanted to create an account that exists in an SAP but not in Salesforce. Since I already have that data, I can actually convert my SAP data into Salesforce data. So maybe in this example, I would import my SAP account data for Carl's Jr. as a Salesforce account, and Data Scout can automate that. On top of that, we've obviously got a bit of flexibility in how strict you want to be with your data quality rules. So we've got this button up here it can be enabled for different roles. So if we wanted to say we still want people to be able to create accounts, they can ignore that warning and create a new one. So you can just as easily hide that. So this is a kind of a quick example of protecting against creating new accounts. We've got the same concept for leads, contacts. You can do that for custom objects. We've also got different business processes that are protected. So converting leads into contacts is another one where we've leveraged our fuzzy logic to enhance the native Salesforce capabilities. So that's a bit on data quality and data cleansing. Where people start to really derive more value from Data Scout is around consolidation. And again, consolidation is the idea of taking two or more data sources. Salesforce could be one of those. In our particular example, we're going to look at SAP, Salesforce, and Remedy, and combining those into one singular customer master. So this becomes more of an interesting master data management use case. But if I scroll down, I have Jamba Juice as a prospect, or in this case, a customer, and I want to feed in information from my ERP system, such as financial information, what are the revenues, month to date, year to date, and some other days sales outstanding, which may impact my ability to sell to them. And then I also want to get some information from our service management database, which in this case is Remedy. So do they have any red tickets? Really useful information if I'm going on a sales call. The ultimate goal here is the more I know about my customer, the better I can engage with them. But as you can see, there's no data here because Data Scout hasn't executed its capability of consolidating that data. And we're going to go back to this consolidated view button, which again is role-based, so you can selectively choose who has access to that. I'm going to scroll down, and you'll see in data sources, in addition to our Salesforce account data, we've also matched up SAP records and Remedy records. And you can see each one has a bit of unique information, which we want to coalesce into a single record. And then they've got some overlapping information. So what Data Scout is tuned to do is first match up all the data from these many different sources, because you can see the different permutations of company and street. So Data Scout understands how to match that up. And then when I click on consolidate, we've actually got business rules executing to say what wins in the event of a conflict. So a really easy example is this address. I've got different addresses, so what wins in the event of a conflict? And that's completely configurable. So in our example, we're going to consolidate it. You'll see that we now push all that data into our Salesforce account. Go back to our main page, which is what all the users would see, and I scroll down, and now I have all that pertinent information. So I've got all my revenues for this particular customer, any of the service information, there's no red tickets outstanding, so we're clear to go with our next meeting. So consolidation is a really useful tool when you have integrated systems. It's not just about deduping and merging. Sometimes you need to have higher order sophistication in the tool set. So consolidation can take many, many different back-end systems, coalesce them into one single unit. The final piece of extension that we've done with Salesforce is around relationships. So if you're familiar with kind of the native Salesforce behavior of hierarchies, we've taken that and expanded on top of it. So we've got an add-in to Data Scout called Hierarchy Scout, which allows you to visualize these relationships. So if I scroll down here, you'll see this account hierarchy, which is a nice visualization of the data. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Data Scouts integrated, absorb this data from many different sources. So this could be based on Dun & Bradstreet, Hoover's, OneSource, any of those different data feeds in terms of grabbing hierarchy information. And it could be blended with your own internal systems or your own internal users. So Data Scout really provides a layer of flexibility on top of all the hierarchy management that you've seen today. And the visualization's one nice way of doing it. So we've got obviously a way to navigate between accounts, but ultimately we want to make this actionable. So behind the scenes, Data Scout essentially stores all this information, hierarchies, so I can create dashboards and do reporting off any point in this. So if I go into my dashboard, I can scroll through. Again, I'm a styrofoam salesperson. I want to see worldwide what's my global relationship with McDonald's, both from Salesforce information and then all my ERP information combined into one. So if you look here, I can see here's my global report that Data Scout's created through its internal hierarchy structure. And then I can drill into the individual opportunities that compose that. So essentially, we walk through kind of the Data Scout value chain, right? We start with basic deduping, data cleansing, standardization. We start to work with higher order value in terms of cleaning data as it's coming in through its integration. Then we can actually combine data together through consolidation. And then finally, how do we build a replica of our relationship with our customer so that it's represented accurately within Salesforce? And Data Scout not only takes care of this the initial time, but anytime any new data is introduced, Data Scout's got this operating on an ongoing basis. If you are interested in what you've seen today or would like any more information about Data Scout, please visit us at our website, www.data-scout.com, and click on the link for more information.